So welcome to the last of the Animexperience online workshops for stop motion animation. And in this one we're going to be covering editing. Now there's so many different editing packages. I can't do them all justice and represent them here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the basics of video editing and just show you a few different ways in a couple of packages that I've got. But pretty much all video editing software or apps will do the same things. Basically, editing is the art of combining video and sound and images together in an interesting way to make a complete video. Some packages will allow you to animate within them as well, setting keyframes and things, and will combine layers of video and animation, text and sounds in very interesting ways. Okay, let's get to it. Okay, to start off with, I'm going to show you the layout of a typical video editing program. And this is Final Cut Pro. Pretty much all video editors will have a similar sort of layout, in the fact that they'll have a project window where you store all your assets, videos, images and sounds. There'll be a playback window, which is here, and there'll be a timeline, which is down here. You may also have a properties window where you can adjust the properties of clips that you've got selected on the timeline. So that will change depending on what you have selected. Just to show an alternative package, I'm going to show an older package, which is Premiere Pro. This is quite an old program now, but still very useful. And again, it has a project window which has all the clips and video clips, sounds, images. There'll be a playback window here. There is a source window as well, so you can look at some of these without changing your view here. There are some effect controls, so this is where the properties will be adjusted. And here's the timeline down here. So this is a project I worked on some years ago for Animex. There are some additional features in Final Cut Pro as well. So we have things like titles, which we can access. So you have different title designs that you can drop in. You also have access to a music library with sound effects, access to your iTunes library that you can also drop in. And over here we have some transitions. So these are things which will go in between clips to show you, basically to creatively mix them together. We also have some effects that we can access, so we can change the look of clips that we have highlighted. That can make me look old-timey. Most decent editing packages will also have access to effects and transitions and things that which will alter your clips in some way, or will join them together in a nice, interesting way. Okay, so I've started a new project called Editing in Final Cut, and this is just to demonstrate how I could basically edit some clips together for you. So I'm going to use some clips that I've made before and I've used in a previous Animexperience workshop. I'm going to use this one here, which is an animated clip of this character waving and the same character walking and flitting around the screen. Okay, so I'm going to drag this clip down onto the timeline, and then I'm going to drag this clip down after it. I can move these clips around if I wanted to, change the order of them, but I do want them in this order. So I'll just get rid of that marker there. Okay, now the next thing I want to show you is importing assets, because you can basically import your media just by clicking on the import media, which is a right click in Final Cut, but you can also access that from the menu, and that'll be to import media. And all editing programs will do the same thing. They will import media from wherever you've saved your video clips and your sounds and images. This red or yellow line, as it sometimes is in Final Cut Pro, is called the Playhead, or the timeline marker. and it shows progress while playing through a clip. And you can drag that around as well. So that's called scrubbing through a clip. Okay, so you can edit your clips on the timeline, and you can do that by hovering the mouse over either end of the clip. And you'll notice that the cursor changes to a editing icon, which I can now click and then drag on the end of the clip or on the beginning of the clip, and it will trim off the beginning or the end. Now, because these clips are animated, there's no waste in them really. I'm not going to make animation I'm not going to use, so I'm not going to trim the ends off these. I can't really extend beyond the clip because there's no more video there. So the only way to make this longer is to retime it, and I can retime that just by highlighting the clip, and there's a tool in Final Cut where I can make it slower so it lasts longer. But obviously this does slow down the animation. So that's now effectively running at 6 frames a second rather than 12 frames a second when it was originally animated. So I'm just going to undo that because I want it back to the original speed. Interestingly, when you change the speed of an audio clip, it will change the way the audio clip sounds. Now, talking of audio, I'm going to drag down some audio that I've pre-recorded, and it's this little block from this clip here. I have lots of different tries of doing the same sound, but I only want the sound at the end of this clip, and it sounds like this. So it's me humming, and I'm going to drag that selection down to this part of the animation here, and I want it to last as long as this character is walking. So I noticed there in the sound clip there's a silent bit at the start, so there's no need to have that. So I'm just going to trim the front of that off. I'm going to move the clip so it actually starts at the beginning of the clip. Okay, great. That fits perfectly, and it's just before this character begins to flit around on the screen. So I'm going to use a different sound. I'm just going to trim off that silent bit at the end there, and I'm going to look in my sound effects folder. I've got one pre-selected here. It's comedy horns. I can preview that. Now there's a long sound with a horn and then a cymbal crash, and then it sort of fades out. I only want this first part, which is the horn. I just want that bit. So I've highlighted it with a yellow box, and I can edit as much of that as I want. Actually, that's as much as I do want. So I'm going to drag that down to here, and I don't want it to go past this clip. So if I just pop it there, it is going to run past that clip, although it is a bit of a quiet bit, because you can see in this waveform, this is the sound. These high points are the loudest parts, and I can see that it's fading out. So I could probably leave it there. If I wanted to, I could just match it to the end of the clip, and these sounds over here would overlap. And it's a good point here just to show you that you can edit in layers, so you can build up different layers of sounds together over the top of each other. So I'm going to leave it there and see what that sounds like. Brilliant. Okay, so this last part, I'm going to show you a different way of putting audio in using Final Cut, and that is to record a voiceover. So I'm going to open this pop-up window called Record Voiceover, and you can see the green lines, they're the levels, shows you how loud I'm talking, and I'm going to record myself from this point here saying hello, goodbye, and I'll do that as it's playing. So the good thing about this is Final Cut will give me a countdown, and then I start to say the lines, and I can see I haven't got long. So That's not a long clip. Okay, so here goes. I'm going to give this a shot. Hello, goodbye. Let's stop there. And obviously I've got this extra bit that I don't really need. So I'm going to trim that down to when I finish talking, which is around about there. And this is a good point for me to show you that you can actually cut or split Tram clips. So I'm going to move my timeline marker. I'm just going to close this record voiceover and I should play it back. Hello, goodbye. Okay, so before I split the track, I can see that it's too loud in places. These red bits show me that the sound is peaking out, so it's a little bit distorted. So I'm just going to reduce the sound, reduce the volume, sorry. Hello, goodbye. Okay, so it sounds a little bit better now. So I'm going to split this here. So I move the timeline marker to this point here. And I need to change my tool that I'm using. This is the select tool that I've got chosen at the moment, but I can change it to something called a blade. And there's a shortcut that I use on the keyboard, which is B, and that brings up this red razor blade. And I'm actually going to split this clip down here. Now the reason I've split the clip is I want to be able to move that part to later. Keep this part at the front. Now I'm going to trim off the front of this first clip and just move that a little bit closer to the start of there. So now when I play it back, hello, goodbye, and there we go. Now I've got these clips all in the right place. I actually do want to add some effects, particularly to the audio. So I'm going to select the clip that I want to change. In fact, I'm going to select all the clips because I want to change the sound on all of these clips of my voice. So I'm going to open up my effects, and I've got some audio effects here that I can add, and one of them is going to be in a category called voice, and it's this helium version here. So I'm just going to double click on that, and that's changed all of these audio clips. It's added the effect on, and this is what it sounds like. Hello, goodbye. There we go. So that's how easy it is to add an effect. I could also add effects to the video clips. I just go to the video effects, and we've got some interesting effects in here, so I could change it to fake video camera or make it look like newsprint. So there's lots of different effects in there. And you can sometimes buy third-party effects as well, which will install as plugins into your program. But pretty much all editing programs will have some sort of effects, particularly when it comes to color correction, which I'm going to show you now. So there are some color presets that you can add in, but I'm actually going to go and use the color correcting up in the properties window. So this is the properties window here, and in there I can change some of the properties of the clips I've got selected. So there are things like scale. I could zoom in, I could shrink it down, but the problem is there's nothing behind this clip, so it just reveals black basically. So you can change the size. You can also change the rotation, move it around if you wanted to, and you can animate these as well. So you could set keyframes so that it starts in the normal position, and as the video plays through, it slowly begins to rotate because you set a keyframe at a different position later on in the timeline. We're not going to do that though. What we are going to do is we're going to color correct this a little bit. So I'm going to increase some of the shadows. You can see here that you can change the light in as a master, so we'll change the light on everything. We can choose shadows or midtones or highlights. I'm going to choose shadows, and this is my exposure button here. So all I do, you've got color, saturation and exposure. So color will take color out, saturation will add color in, exposure will increase the light. So I'm going to change the amount of shadows. So you can see in the clip there that it's getting brighter all of a sudden. Okay, so I want to do the same with this clip as well. I'm just going to drag it up to there. They look pretty similar. Yep, no significant change clip to clip. Okay. So that's changing properties, and just go back to the main window for properties. You can also crop your clip in Final Cut, so you can make the frame smaller if you wanted to. I'm not going to do that. So I wanted to show you a bit about adding transitions between clips, but because there's no extra information in either of these animation clips, I can't really add a dissolve between them, because what a dissolve does is it takes information from the first clip and adds it to this and mixes it with the second clip. So I'll show you what happens when I try and apply a dissolve to this. If I select the beginning of this clip here, then I can double click on this cross dissolve and it will apply it to that section. But it's going to ask me to create a transition from false information because there's no extra media beyond the edges of the clips. So if I do that, it's going to actually alter my timeline and it's going to change a lot of things I'm not really happy with. So I'm going to undo that. And what I want to do is to add a dissolve at the end. Now I could do that quite simply just by clicking on here and again double clicking, and you can edit a transition. But you'll notice that this transition it's got nothing to transition into, so it's just going to fade to black. So I can change the duration of that so it does fade to black. There we go, it's got a nice smooth fade to black at the end. Again, I'm not really happy about that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in another clip that I've already made. It's called And That's, and it's me talking. And I'm going to, you can see here that there's a bit at the start of this clip. It's just me waiting to say my line. I say my line, and then there's a bit at the end that I don't need. So I'm going to just highlight the bit that I do need and call that my in point. And that's how you do editing. Thank you very much. And that's going to be my out point. So I'm going to drag this down to the timeline, and it's going to add that clip to the end. I'm just going to shrink my view a little so you can see all of the clips. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to pop a dissolve in between this clip and this clip. It's still going to change my timeline a little bit because it still needs to create a transition on the end of this clip here. So I'm going to do that, but I need to do a little bit of shaking around to change where this clip is going to start and where this clip is going to end. So I'm going to lose a little bit on this clip, but I'm not going to lose much on this clip at all. So I'm just going to edit this down to make it a very short transition, because I don't want a long dissolve between the two clips. But the problem is it's missing off the start of my dialogue there. So I just need to do a little bit of jiggery pokery like I mentioned, just so we don't miss the start of me talking there. And I want it to start just at the end of this noise here. I'm just going to take that transition and move it to there. So you can see we've lost a little bit of this clip, so I just need to nudge this sound so it's closer to the end and there's no dialogue while the dissolve is happening. So I'm just going to move it just a touch more because I can see that sound is ending there. Okay, so let's see what that looks like. And that's how you do editing. Very good. So I'm going to have a fade out to black at the end, so I'm just going to click on the end of that clip to put this little little yellow line there to make sure it's highlighted. If I double click on the dissolve, then it applies it automatically. There's a default transition time, which is why I need to edit that down to make it a bit shorter, and I want it to happen just as my dialogue is finishing, just there, because I can see the sound getting quieter, so that it ends with a short transition to fade to black. And seeing the whole thing together. And that's how you do editing. And there we go. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to show you is how to add titles in Final Cut. And I've got some pre-selected titles up here, and they come in various styles. Some of them might be familiar to you. You may have seen some of these on YouTube even. So you can preview through lots and lots of different ones, and each program will have its own set. I think I'm going to use this one here. So it gives me a title and a subtitle. You don't have to use the subtitle. I may do here. So basically I've selected it. I'm going to drag that down to my timeline. And I can see that it's quite long. I mean, that my whole edit's not very long at all. So I'm just going to shrink that down so that it's only for about half of this first clip. So it doesn't last very long at all. So maybe a little bit longer than that. Okay. So I'm going to go to the middle of the clip where I can see both the word title and subtitle. I'm going to double click on this so it becomes active, and you can see that it's highlighted the text. So I'm going to call this editing, and that's subtitle. I'm going to double click on that, and basics. Okay, so I'm happy with that. It's got this animation that's already in there, which is quite interesting. As I slowly scrub through, you can see what it does. I'm not going to change any of those settings, which I can do. It does allow me to change some of the settings in the project window. I can change the fonts, I can change the size and the position on the screen. I'm quite happy with it being in this corner though. So playing that, let's see what it looks like. It's very quick, and that's how you do editing. Okay, so it's very quick. I mean, I could extend it to slow it down a little bit. And that's how you do editing. And that is how you do titles. The next thing is to export your video, and in Final Cut that's done by sharing the master file. So I'm not too fussed about any of this information here. What I do want to do though is to change the settings, or to make sure that they're being the final video will be shared in a format that is of decent quality, but doesn't make a massive video file at the end. I could choose some of these very high quality ways, even uncompressed, to export the final video, but the file size of the final video will be very big. H.264 encodes and encodes the final video, but sort of optimizes it and doesn't really sacrifice much on quality, but it does make a smaller file at the end. So I'm going to just leave it at H.264. And when I click on next, it's going to ask me for a name. So I'm going to save it in the place where I've been making all of these Animexperience online workshops, and it's called Editing in Final Cut, and I'm just going to save that there. And I can tell that the program's working because up here we've got a little pie chart, and that's it. Share successful. I'm going to look for that in the right place. Editing in Final Cut, and here we go. And that's how you do editing. And that is how you do editing. So thank you very much. Okay, so that's the basics of editing covered. Like I say, pretty much all packages will have similar ways of doing things, where you can bring in clips and different assets, different videos, images and sounds, be able to trim them, be able to transition them together, working in layers, adding sounds. So they'll all have different ways of doing that, and then exporting your final video. So that's the last of these Animexperience online workshops. I hope you've enjoyed them. And I wish you very good luck in creating your own animated masterpieces. Bye now.